stackedinvest.com. He runs the operations for the company, so I'm excited to get a little bit of a background to the company and the tools they provide. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Riley. Appreciate it.
Yeah, by all means. So let's move right along in chronological order here. I've got 6 or 7 questions for you, but I'd love to know a little bit about your background story, what you were into before crypto and blockchain, and how that made its way into your life.
Sure. So I got involved in crypto probably along with a lot of other people in 2017. And so for me, it was around April. And the way that I got introduced to the industry started out as a finance background through university, but then didn't do anything professional-wise in the finance space. I was actually in enterprise sales. And that's where all my professional experience has been, and that's what led me to Stacked. But at the time, I was working in Chicago for a digital media company, and Bitcoin and crypto and Ether was all that was being talked about kind of on the sales floor. And as somebody that's super into, kind of cutting edge tech, and then, in this weird finance space, quasi finance space, it was super interesting to me. So kind of dove head first in, and got super involved in 2017, and decided that I wanted to be more than just an investor. I wanted to build, a startup in the space. And so worked through 2017, 2018, 2019, and now 2020, now here we are, and some of the hard work is paying off. So it's been sort of a long, crazy journey, and I'm happy to get into that wherever you want me to. But that's how I started.
Yeah, what a beautiful introduction. So it's been 4 or 5 years now you've been in the industry, watching the changes and watching the evolution of the space and the currencies and these projects that are involved. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's crazy when you say 4 years. It feels like 10, but everything moves so quickly that it's a really exciting space to be in. I really think that if you're an entrepreneur or somebody that wants to contribute to something pretty large, this is the best spot to be in. I mean, things get adopted in crypto that just aren't possible in the quote unquote normal world or the real world.
Sure.
And so it's a really exciting space.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I want to talk a little bit more about Stacked Invest and this company you're working with today, the startup. The question I have for you is, in what ways would you like to impact the industry over the next coming years? But before you jump into that, give me a little bit of a background of these tools that you guys are offering and what they do and how they help their users.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'll give you the quick version of what Stack does. The way that we started and what we'll continue to build is we want to make crypto a lot easier to adopt for the average person. When you think about the traditional finance space, I think there are probably 2 companies that really made a big impact on accessibility to markets, and that would be Robinhood and like a Wealthfront. So Robinhood does such a good job because of the barrier to entry. It's practically zero.
Right.
You can have an account with $50 in it, and you don't feel the impact of what used to be $7, $8, $10 trades eating into that account balance. So
Sure.
that opened up the world of traditional finance to a lot of people, probably our age and even younger. And then the second one that I mentioned there was Wealthfront. And if you're not familiar with Wealthfront, kind of a very similar mantra or goal as Robinhood is to kind of open up accessibility, but the swing that they take on it is that they want to automate a lot of the investing. So it's robo investing is sort of like the buzzword, but the idea is getting a new, relatively fresh person into the traditional finance space, in this case with Wealthfront, and automating their investing so that it's completely hands off and not something that they have to worry about. The average person doesn't want to be thinking about what stocks to buy or what companies are going to be changing in the next 12 months. I personally think the same thing applies to crypto. There's a small sort of niche part of the market, and we probably fit into that live, eat, and breathe crypto, but the average person is not going to do that. They have a life that they're living. They're going to work, they're taking their kids to school, they're doing chores around the house. Like, they're just not going to be into these crazy sort of new vehicles. And so Stacked is trying to bring that automation to the crypto space, like I think no one else really has been able to do thus far. So we are a platform where you can connect your own exchanges. So you custody your funds on your own exchanges. You connect to Stacked through API, which just allows us to be able to place buy and sell orders sort of on your behalf. And the idea behind that is you can buy automated indices or baskets that diversify you into different coins, cryptos, and that basket or indice rebalances based on period. And we show you all the back testing. So if you would have had this portfolio allocation over the last 5 years, here are the ups and downs and what would have occurred. That's part of it. The other part of it, for more of like a power user, is we have an algo marketplace. So authors, quantitative traders that write strategies that try to predict where the market is going to be going, and trade that using perpetual swaps, which is a little bit more of a complicated vehicle, allows you to long and short the market. Authors submit those algorithms to us, and we provide them for rent, basically. So you can buy a monthly subscription, use the algorithm, sort of follow along with that author. So those are the two aspects of our product. A lot more is coming. We're releasing version 2 here in February, which will have a lot more. But
Nice.
the thesis behind what we're doing is we want to automate cryptocurrency investing.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I've never been a user of your product per se, but I have noticed the impact it's having with some notable people in crypto Twitter, and in this crypto social media land, I see more and more notable users that are jumping on, and it's definitely raising some eyebrows as far as I'm concerned. So it is a real pleasure to be able to get some of the background as far as the operations and who are the people behind the scenes running this, and yeah, that's it's very enlightening. So thank you. That's cool.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. You mentioned kind of the adoption.
Yeah.
It kind of goes along with crypto adoption. We're seeing, a crazy parabolic advance in crypto. We're seeing crazy parabolic advance in users.
I know.
So it's fun.
Right. Even as we sit here talking, that we're touching $40,000 Bitcoin for the first time ever. So it's a pretty
That's what I
exciting
like to
time. Yeah, it's amazing. So actually, now I want to touch a little bit on these assets that this platform is working with. These digital currencies, digital gold, right? Cryptocurrencies, decentralized finance. What kind of a potential do you think this asset class has? How far does that potential go in your eyes, as far as disruption and building something new for the future?
So to me, I think when you're talking to the average person about crypto, it sounds strange. And the reason it sounds strange, and at least this is my case and maybe your case as well, the people that I'm talking to, friends, family, we're all based in the United States. And I think people that are in the United States have a little bit more of a difficult time wrapping their mind around why something like cryptocurrency is actually fairly necessary, because we have such and at least in our lifetime, we've had such a stable financial system. You talk to, and we get exposure to so many people around the world because of our product, people that just have not had that experience, right? So insane inflation in local currencies, whether that's Venezuela or Rome or even the European Union sees that individually as countries fallen in and out of the euro. It kind of opens your mind to the idea of why it's so important. So the way that I like to describe cryptocurrency and why I think it's important to the average US user is to kind of help open their mind up to the rest of the world. Just because you've always had $1 equal $1 and your bank account and your buying power is not fluctuating on a daily basis doesn't mean that that's the case for the rest of the world. And then I think the most obvious light bulb on moment is go to your grandparents, go to your parents and say, what did you buy your first car for? What did you buy your first house for? How much was a movie ticket? And they're like, oh, a movie ticket, that was 65 cents. And now we spend $20, to see a movie. And so I think those are the most tangible ways to see the impact of inflation over time. And so your question is, how far can we go and why, where do I see the markets going? I think people, when you combine sort of what I just went through and some of those real tangible examples, and now some news cycles that are actually impacting them, be it coronavirus and stimulus
Right.
and the printing of fiat currency, people are like, oh yeah, how are we going to pay for all this debt? And why is my $100 that I have in the bank still worth $100 now that we've increased the monetary supply by 3 trillion? There's a stat that's mind blowing, and I might not get it perfectly right. It changes all the time, but I think it goes somewhere along the lines of 31% of all US dollars in circulation in existence have been created in the last 12 months. And so like when you think about that, 31% of all US dollars in the last 12 months. That's incredible.
It's mind-blowing.
And so that's why, in my opinion, this space is growing so quickly, and we are just at the beginning. So price prediction, I have no idea. I'm not a trader. And I like to build in the ecosystem. That's my contribution. I'm a buy and hold kind of guy, and I use our algorithms on the platform to kind of do that trading for me. So price prediction, no idea, but this space really just is getting started. And I think over the next, let's say 2 to 3 years, especially with sort of some of the political sort of ebbs and flows that we're having, people are going to see why crypto is here to stay.
Yeah, I would concur with your opinion 100%. I think that was well said. Thank you.
Thanks.
My next question here kind of goes back to your experience that you've had in this industry the last now coming on 5 years. I want to talk a little bit about how the industry, the landscape has changed since you've entered it, the changes you've seen, and how do you anticipate it'll change in the future? Is the change going to be at a relative pace? Do you think it'll get faster and bigger and stronger, or do you think the ebbs and flows will continue?
I think the ebbs and flows will continue. I think part of the reason behind Bitcoin has these crazy run-ups and these crazy drawdowns really is around definitely news narratives, right? So that plays a factor, but it's a scarce asset. So like I don't know how closely you pay attention to like crypto Twitter, but that's sort of my home. So you saw maybe like 4, 5, 6 months ago the craze of Pokemon cards, right? And the fact that suddenly people were paying, I'm going to get the number wrong, but like hundreds of thousands of dollars for something that you and I probably had as a kid, and we got rid of them in a garage sale. Right. Because that's a scarce asset. So is Bitcoin. And so it goes on these crazy sort of fear of missing out runs. But the technology behind it is consistently getting better. The infrastructure behind it is consistently getting better. If you look at exchanges today and the ability to onboard capital into the space versus what it looked like in 2017, it's vastly different. And so if you fast forward and you go to 2023 or 2024, I assume it will be vastly different again. I think each cycle brings in a new source of talent. People that are really good at what they do, working at tech companies in 2017, they're paying attention now. And so they're moving to crypto companies and they're building really cool products. And that legitimately improves the space. I think you're also seeing institutional adoption that you didn't see in 2017. Some of the largest asset managers in the world are hot on crypto right now. And so my hope is that my guess is that we'll continue to see these crazy booms and these terrible bear markets where we just have like 2 years of building. But my thought is that it will flatten out as institutional adoption actually comes into the space. And a lot of that is not personal experience. I can't say that I'm working with institutions every single day, but my friends that are, from what I hear, the curves very well may flatten out in the future.
Interesting. It would be fascinating to see more of a plateau type feeling to the growth, because the volatility has been so extreme. And I mean, Bitcoin, its 12th birthday was 4 days ago, and in those 12 years alone, I mean, it's been to the moon, it's been down to the ocean, it's been back up to the moon. It's like it's insane. It's like a roller coaster at Cedar Point. I mean, it's like, but to think
Bitcoin has been $3,000 and $30,000 in the same year, and that was 2020. So it's a volatile asset class, but I think what works best over time is dollar cost averaging. If you're somebody that wants to be involved in the space, don't go all in at one time, and plan what sort of asset, maybe that's 1 to 5% of your net worth, that you can afford to lose and you believe is a hedge against the crazy inflation that I think we're going to experience. And dollar cost that average in over a longer period of time, have a diversified, portfolio, and try to avoid some of the like gut feelings that people get that they're missing out.
Yeah.
Because just because you see something, some sensational article or post on Twitter, doesn't mean that is, you're seeing the best of everything, not the worst of everything. And so slow and steady wins the race, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's well put, and I think that's great advice, especially for someone who has got their eyes raised but doesn't know where to start and doesn't want to just ape in with all of their money and try and make a few $1,000s at the top. So.
Yep.
I think that's a good way to put it. Now, I'm curious, with the type of work you do running operations for Stacked Invest, what is an average day of work like for you? What does someone outside the industry, and they're thinking, what are these tech guys doing? I mean, obviously they're in front of screens all day long, but what is an average day of work like for you? Is it communications, or do you work with the coding, or where do you see yourself?
Yep. So I'm strictly on the relationship side. I handle pretty much all business development for the platform. We have a really great growing team now. We started with just about, I want to say, 5 of us from day one, and I think we've grown to over 20 now. On our most recent company meeting, I think we had 25, and we're looking to hire more. So. An average day for me, I primarily handle the relationships between Stacked Invest, our exchange partners, and our authors. So the authors that are writing the algorithms that are listed on the platform, working with them on different technical issues that they may be experiencing, making sure that the data connections between their systems and our systems are good. That's what the author relationships look like. Okay. But then on the exchange side, we work with all of the large exchanges through their APIs. And so an API basically just allows us to allow a user to hold custody of their funds on the exchange. So let's use Binance as an example.
Okay.
It's a widely used exchange.
Sure.
So you may hold assets on Binance. Let's say that you have a diversified portfolio that's rebalancing weekly on Stacked. Every week, orders for an increased position or a decreased position in an asset, depending on its performance, goes through the API to the exchange. And then that exchange places the orders for you. So if you hold 50 coins, you don't have to go in and see which coins are outperforming, which coins are underperforming, and reallocate your assets. It's all done in an instant.
Interesting.
Well, that connection between the exchanges, it goes through the API. Those APIs are constantly changing. Exchanges are improving them, adding more features, changing the languages that they're using, and so there's a pretty consistent update process. And so majority of my day is spent working with the exchanges, building relationships, making sure we have sort of the best execution times, the best products to offer to our clients, and then help grow the business. So whatever fire comes up that day is generally what I'm working on.
No kidding. Wow, that is very fascinating. It is very cool to hear about what your job looks like and kind of the ins and outs of what this company does, because these tools are becoming more popular, especially as the world of finance keeps growing. And I mean, in the last 20-something years, there has been so many more on-ramps that have evolved, and it's one of the reasons the economy has grown at such a quick pace that past economies have never seen before. So I'm really interested to see where this is heading in the next 10 to 20 years. I think it's going to be a pace, again, that we haven't seen before. And these tools are going to play a larger and larger role, as are the people that are behind them, running these tools and making sure that they're efficient and that they work well. So
I agree.
By all means, I'm going to have to, I think, dip my toes here into Stacked Invest and maybe create an account and get set up and learn a little bit, because to be quite honest with you, I'm unfamiliar with these tools. I'm fascinated by them, but I'm green. I'm green behind the ears. I'm a newbie. I'm used to doing it myself and logging in with my own username and password and.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that either. I mean, some people do want to actively manage their assets, and that's totally fine. Sure. The nice thing about Stacked is all of the indice products that we were kind of talking about diversifying, those are all free. So any user can go on and connect their exchange account, subscribe to one of the indices or baskets, and also make adjustments. So maybe you see a basket on there that you really like, but there's a coin that you just don't believe in, that you think this is not something I want to hold, you can adjust that allocation percentage, and the rest of the portfolio is still good. So
Interesting.
the thought process is the faster we get free tools like this out to people that makes their experience in the space better, a little bit less stressful, and takes some of the everyday work out of it, the better the adoption curve will be.
Yeah, I think that is definitely one way you could see the learning curve dropping and the adoption curve getting smoother. I think that's definitely going to be a very important way to getting new users into the industry and staying into the industry, not just coming for the get rich quick scheme, which some people they're not familiar with the assets, and that's all they think it is because they've read one article about, oh, it's a scam, oh, it's just used for darknet, oh, it's just laundering money. It's a new asset class that is completely revolutionizing the way that we look at other asset classes. So it's definitely not something to be ignored. I'm curious, do these tools only work with the cryptocurrency assets, or how far diverse does this get? Do you guys include like DeFi, like how new are the coins? Like,
Good question. So to answer that question, yes, today we only deal with cryptocurrencies.
Okay.
And so if the asset is available on one of the supported exchanges, then we can include it in a portfolio. You asked about DeFi. We do have a DeFi index. It's up something absolutely stupid, like 3,000% year to date or something like that. Oh, and I guess we're in a new year, so that would be 2020 year to date. So basically our available offerings go as far as the assets that are available on exchanges. And so as exchanges add new assets, we have the ability to support them. Today that's crypto. Tomorrow that might be a combination of crypto and maybe traditional assets as well. But we definitely support DeFi sort of assets. The only stipulation would be that they would have to be listed on one of the exchanges that we're integrated with.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm assuming too you're picking up exchanges as they become available. I know there's been a plethora of exchanges that have launched in the past 2-3 years alone. I mean, Binance, for example, launched in 2017. They're one of the kings in the space right now. They cannot be ignored.
Yep, that's absolutely right. We've kind of taken a hiatus or a pause on adding new exchanges as we're building out version 2 of our platform. So if you go on and you create an account and you see the platform as it is today, come back probably in 14 days, it'll be completely different. We're getting ready to release this new version. And so once that new version's out and we feel like it's good and stable, then we'll get back to work on adding new exchanges, and then that increases the amount of assets we can offer.
That's beautiful. So version 2 of Stacked Invest launches in February. You said about 2 weeks is the time frame with that, and sounds very exciting.
Yep, February's the date. Fingers crossed, nothing goes wrong between now and then, but we're really excited to get it out.
That's great. I just have 2 more quick, small questions. Is there anything else you want to add about Stacked, though, before we kind of move away from that topic?
Yeah, I mean, last thing I would say is that to anybody who's interested in building in the space, the biggest thing you can do is make connections. I mean, Stacked kind of came about for me after probably 3 different stops along the way in crypto. Started kind of contracting with an exchange. I wanted to get my feet wet in the space, and I knew I had real skills that I could offer from the real world, and so took a contract position. That didn't work out super well. That exchange had some issues. Moved on to launching my own company, which then got bought, which now turned into Stacked. And so I would say if you're somebody that wants to be in the space and wants to get involved, the quickest way to do so is reach out to the companies you think are interesting and say, hey, you got anything for me? Here are my skills. This is what I can bring. Take a part-time side gig role and get some experience.
Wow, that's amazing. Honestly, that's something I think that's something that myself and listeners would benefit from doing and applying to their own lives. Because I have a lot of questions from people that are interested but don't have any skin in the game per se, and they are intimidated by the learning curve, and they don't know where to start, and they don't know about starting a new account, and they're weary about the entire process. They don't like the KYC rules. They don't like uploading the pictures of their driver's license and the passport. They're intimidated, and it shies them away. And then they come back later when the price hits a new all-time high, and they're okay, maybe I should do this. And
now I'll do it.
Yeah.
So some of what you talked to is on the regulation side of things,
Sure.
and sort of this weird space where crypto started as like I think people had the intention of wanting to be anonymous. I think especially if you're located in the U.S., that mindset is going to have to change as this becomes an accepted and regulated asset. That's good for adoption. And I think there's sort of like two sects to crypto right now, and there's like what I would say the original crowd is like, no, I don't want a KYC. I don't want these transactions being tracked. If you want crypto to be adopted, especially in the United States, worldwide is separate, but in the United States, we have to become more comfortable with working within the regulatory framework that we're given, and also being proactive and going to Washington in this case, and asking for the things that we need. There's a lot of friends that I work with that that is their calling, that's their gift, and so they're working on the regulation side. That's okay too.
Awesome. Well put. My last two questions here. I ask everyone I have on the show, who do you think Satoshi Nakamoto might be? What's your best guess? What story, what plot line makes the most sense to Alan? How do you tell the story?
Yeah, good question. That's not really something I think about that often, and maybe that's weird. Maybe everybody thinks about it, and I'm the only one that doesn't. But to me, I think the beautiful thing about crypto is that it doesn't necessarily matter who Satoshi was or is, because of the fact that he or she intentionally or unintentionally stepped away. It's now its own thing. And so I think the worst thing that could happen to crypto is Satoshi makes him or herself known. Mm-hmm. And I think that creates an attack vector. So like right now, if you're a government and you want to shut down cryptocurrency, let's say Bitcoin in this case, you can't. And I think a big part of that is there's no one point of attack that you could go after. There's nobody that you could pinpoint and say, this is the person that started Bitcoin, and so whether or not we stop Bitcoin, this person's going to pay for it. My personal opinion is that Satoshi is probably dead, and that's why we don't see any activity or movement. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So I think that's healthy, right?
That's what makes the most sense to me. I often wonder what would happen if those coins move. If those million coins left his wallet, could you imagine? So
actually, I think in 2020, we saw the closest example as to what would happen. So I'm not going to remember all of the details off the top of my head, but I want to say 3 or 4 months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, there were coins moving from very early, like what were being called like Genesis addresses, very, very early in Bitcoin. You saw them move, and there was an immediate price reaction to the downside. It immediately recovered, and it was a non-event. Sure. But I think that is probably the closest real example as to what would happen if those million coins moved.
Interesting. Yeah, that's something I have to wonder, and it's scary to a certain extent. You mentioned how could a big government or how could an entity try and stop the network at this point? You really can't, right? The one way you would be able to stop the network would be literally buying up the coins or by taking over the hash rate, which would be financially like implorable. It would be almost impossible. And at that point, the million coins in that wallet would be the largest threat against you even doing something like that.
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast between Anthony Pompliano and Brad, the CEO of XRP. And the reason I went back to listen to this episode, this specifically, was because they were talking about crypto regulation. And so we saw the news maybe 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, that XRP has the potential of being considered a unregistered security in the United States. This podcast episode happened before that, and they were talking about what would happen if XRP became security. And during that podcast, they have differing views on Bitcoin and whether it could be 51% attacked. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would go and listen to that episode.
Interesting.
Personally, I tend to agree with Anthony Pompliano during the argument, but it's a good, well-balanced argument.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'll have to pull it up. I might even throw in a link to that in the description as one of these topics here. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Last question here before we hop off. I'm curious, Alan, who do you draw inspiration from, living or dead? Who are people that you look up to and inspire you to do the things that you do and to have the goals that you have?
Huh, that's such a good question. This is going to sound super cliche, but I'll go with two here. One cliche and one that's a little bit more meaningful. I was just reading an article before we hopped on that, today Elon Musk passed Jeff Bezos as the richest man in the world, at least on paper, right? There's like the thought that there's a lot of unregistered wealth that, some Saudi princes are actually the most richest man in the world. But Elon Musk is somebody that I think is maybe underrated by the majority of the world. Like, he has sort of his cult following, and those people are massive fans, and he's definitely not underrated in that community. But I think to the average person, he's working on some really amazing things that have such an impact, or could have such an impact on what the world looks like 50 years from now. And so I think he's somebody that I look up to, in the sense that he's really someone that plays the long game. With SpaceX and Tesla, at the start of both of those, you're like, how are those ever going to be monetizable businesses? But he's proving everybody wrong. And so that's somebody. The other is, I have some close family members, especially older than I, that went through a ton in their life to be able to give me, everything that I had. And so part of what drives me is being able to sort of like live up to expectations in that sense. Story of my grandmother, a Jewish family that was living in Germany and had to flee Germany and move to France and then came to the US. And so like that story resonates a ton with me and drives me to fulfill any potential I might be able to have.
That's awesome. That's such a beautiful inspiration to take. I'm glad you are accepting it, and I'm glad that drives you. That's good.
Awesome.
By all means, my fingers are crossed for you and your journey. Thank you for coming on and talking about Stacked here today. I'm really excited to try the product. I'm going to sign up, and I'm going to dip my toes in the water. Thank you very much.
Cool. Yeah, it was great to meet you, and I'm glad we were able to get connected. Turns out we're a lot closer than maybe we knew a couple of days ago in terms of location. So that's awesome.
Yeah, by all means. Well, enjoy your day.